Hey everyone, this is Unreasonable Founders, No Plan B. It's a conversation series featuring individuals who reject the conventional career path and insist on bending reality to address a problem they care about. In many cases, they walk away from safety, status, or comfort and keep going when most people would quit or give up. My goal is to introduce you to at least one new founder each month, and I think you'll find their personal and professional stories intriguing and their reasons for starting a company thought provoking. This is the third interview in the series. Today I'm talking with Jeremy Steinbring, the founder and CEO of Ravonics. Jeremy, in a minute or two, we're going to get into what Ravonics is and why you built the company, but let's start with the fact that sometimes the most unreasonable founders don't look obvious at all until you zoom out. So Jeremy didn't grow up in a tech hub. He grew up in Western Massachusetts. It's a place that tends to produce grounded, practical people, not hype or shortcuts, people who learn by doing. And long before Revonics, long before RevOps, Jeremy learned something foundational. If you want a different life, you have to be willing to leave what's familiar, take risks without guarantees, and trust yourself to figure out things as you go. That mindset clearly shows up early in his career. But on paper, it doesn't look linear. Marketing, sales, customer success, product, and RevOps. But underneath it all is a deep curiosity about how systems actually work and a growing intolerance for complexity that wastes time and energy. And then life intervened. Became a father, learning that both of his daughters were born with cystic fibrosis, permanently changed how Jeremy thought about time, priorities, and responsibility. Optimization stopped being a business concept. It became personal. Wasted effort wasn't frustrating anymore. It was unacceptable. So Revonics wasn't born out of ego or ambition. It emerged from a deeper need to create independence, control over time, and a sustainable life for his family. And that combination, early risk-taking, lived experience across the GTM stack, and a purpose forged through fatherhood is what made Jeremy a true no plan B founder. All right, let's dive in. So, as I mentioned, you grew up in Western Massachusetts. What was that environment like? And when did you first feel the pull to leave and build a personal and professional life beyond what you grew up seeing?
Yeah, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Western Massachusetts. What can I say? The only good thing about it was that it was small and it was safe. Honestly, it was a great place to grow up. And looking back, I can understand why my parents were comfortable with raising a family there. Everybody knew everybody. My town was, I think, 5 to 6,000 people at the time. I had a regional high school. I was one of 300 students total.
Mm.
But your opportunities were limited. I had the benefit of doing some traveling when I was younger. I did a couple stints in New York and New Jersey for my mom's job. And so I got a little taste of what life is like outside of a small town. And the opportunities are so scarce in a small town. If you weren't going to do construction or work at your local video store, like there's really not a lot out there, and I wanted to do more. And honestly, a lot of it was driven by my love for music. So when I was in high school and middle school and as a kid, I was the musician of the family. Guitar, playing shows in local pubs and restaurants, really, really small. But that's what I did all through high school. And so like the dream early on was, well, I need to be a rock star. People got to hear me outside of my, 6,000 person town. And that's when I decided to leave and go to Arizona. And ever since, I've lived everywhere. Washington, I've picked up and moved to Hawaii. Randomly, I lived in LA working in the audio industry for some time. It's life has its own path. It was not planned, but it's taken me to a lot of really cool places.
You were so close by, it would have been cool probably to go to Berkeley School of Music and
So I
being
actually
over in
have a
Boston.
I have a funny story about that. So my parents were very much follow your passion people. As I am now older with my own kids, I realize that's not probably the best advice, but that's a topic for another day. But they did tell me, hey, you should really follow your passion. And if you really want to do this, you should commit, go to school for it, try to make a name for yourself. And Boston was, an hour away. So I did a summer camp, which was supposed to be 2.5 weeks in my junior year summer. So right before my senior year. And they have you stay in the dorms overnight, and you bring your guitar, and they put you in courses, and you kind of get a taste of what it's like to be at Berklee. The first day, I am put with a group of probably 10 to 15 other musicians, other guitarists. Some were older, some were younger. And they put a piece of sheet music in front of us. And what no one told me was that you had to be able to read music in order to be at Berklee. And so I was looking at it like hieroglyphs on a piece. Like I had no idea what it was doing, what it was saying. There was no title on the track, on the sheet music. So people started playing, and they actually stopped, and they said, Jeremy, like, do you know how to read music? And I said, no. And the professor there was like, well, in order to attend this school, you have to know how to read music. And so instantly, like in front of the entire class of musicians, I'm super excited to be there. I know that I can play. I have guitars on my wall. They're not just for show. I've done this my entire life. I was completely embarrassed. And before I decided to just leave and pack up, I asked the professor what song it was. And I'll never forget, they said it's Little Wing by Stevie Ray Vaughan. And so I played the whole thing by ear in front of them. And then I walked out, and I didn't go back. I called my mom. I said, come pick me up. I'm done. Nope. Because I wanted to do it my way. And it's funny because like we're going to talk about RevOps and some of those other things. I'm not spiteful, but I like when someone tells me no, or says it's the wrong way, or you have to do it this way, it has to be this path. I'm kind of oh yeah, like I'll just do it and show you what I can do when I put my mind to it, or there's multiple ways to do something. So, but ever since I knew that going to a school, being a studio musician wasn't for me.
Got it. Well, with my kids being 25 and 29, the advice to say, follow your passion, I agree with. I don't think it's the best advice. Instead, what I tell them is follow your purpose. But oftentimes people don't know what their purpose is until they're much older. And so it's really, really hard to ask a high school or even a college age child or kid to follow their purpose when they don't even know what that purpose is yet, and may not for many, many years. So, yeah. All right, I want to follow on with part of what you were talking about, but more of a more specific question about that. So leaving home is often the first real risk that we all take. How did stepping away from Western Massachusetts shape your relationship with uncertainty, risk, and on self-reliance?
Yeah, it taught me a lot. It taught me not to be fearful of what you don't know, because just as many people that left the small town that, I'm still connected with personally, there are just as many people that I went to high school with that are on the same street doing the same thing that they've ever done their entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it certainly wasn't for me. And so it definitely made me okay with taking risks, because you can always go back. If I think about when I was making the decision to start Revonics, the thing always in the back of my mind, and my wife always reminded me of, was you can always just go back to what you were doing. You're not leaving it forever. These are not decisions that you have to make that are lifetime decisions. You're just taking a shot. And the worst case scenario, you always find a way to figure it out. And so it kind of built that kind of callous in my mind that, oh, you could just pick up and move to Hawaii. You've never been there. Oh, you could just start a new job, or you could do something different, or try something different, or pivot, or, change your environment. So to me, I think it was a big reason why I am where I am, because in my psyche, I feel like, well, I'm not really afraid of much anymore because of what I've gone through personally.
Love that. Sounds good. So when people ask you today, what do you do? How do you answer that today? And how is that different from earlier in your career?
Yeah. Well, today at Ravonix, what we do is we build modern system tech stacks for modern go-to-market teams. And what I mean by that is, obviously, everybody is so, ingratiated with AI and new technology, but it's the culmination of those new tools with old school fundamentals and processes that, when delivered together, really makes a huge difference. And so we help teams optimize and implement their CRM tools, the connected ecosystem of systems around it, and deploy AI and AI agents within their tech stack. So cutting edge stuff, everybody's really interested in it. We're kind of at the precipice of what this kind of role is going to be, go to market engineering. And so it's super exciting. We learn a ton, and I have a fantastic team of individuals that help me do it.
Yep, sounds good. So I figure this probably weaves into that design of the company and the organization and the kind of people that you hire. But early in your career, it looks nonlinear to me. Marketing, sales, customer success, product, even rev ops. At the time, did you feel like searching, or were you unknowingly preparing to run something of your own, to be a founder?
It was not planned, but it was the best decision that I made. So early on, like a lot of people do, they don't know any better. A lot of it is chasing the money, chasing the opportunity. And during that time, over the last like 10, 15 years prior to COVID, I mean, tech and SaaS space kind of exploded out of nowhere. And so there were always opportunities, especially living in Phoenix and Scottsdale for the vast majority of that time. A lot of San Francisco companies have large offices in Phoenix because of cost of living. It's cheaper to hire staff, and a lot of them were go to market. That's where a lot of the people lived. And so I've kind of felt like it was driven by opportunities that were presented, and it was driven by a curiosity to learn different things. So for example, I would, be a customer success manager, and then I'd find another opportunity to move into an operations role. And I'm like, ooh, well, you know what? I don't know that I could do what I've been doing my entire life. Let's try something new. And I think if you go back to moving away from home, it made me comfortable with switching all the time. Now, what actually ended up being the reason why I feel comfortable doing what I do today, it started to become a detriment, because when you're interviewing at companies, one of the questions you always see, if you see very transient, every 9 to year and a half, people moving, it's like, hey, can this person actually stick with it? And so that became something that I had to overcome. However, I would not be able to do what I do now had I not had all of those experiences. Even before tech, when I worked at Apple Retail, I worked for Chase Bank as a banker. I've had odd jobs in between. Obviously I was a performer, so it helps me with things like this and not being nervous to talk to people and share my experience. So I'm like very grateful that I made the decisions that I did along the way, but it is not linear at all.
Yeah, it looks that way. It feels like somewhere along the way, there was a point at which you realized that you were optimizing for independence rather than safety or a title. Is that fair?
Yes, very much so. Even my personal life too, because it helps me, for what it's worth, my time at Apple, like I became the pseudo Apple fix-it guy for my entire network of friends and family. When I was a personal banker, I understood finance and how finance happens. It helped me figure out how to buy my first house, and all those things. So my interests are broad, and I explored every single one of them. And what led me to find out is I started getting higher positions, and I realized that the reason they were hiring me is because I understood all of these things. If I was interviewing with a VP of sales, I understand what they want and what they're looking for and what they want to hear. If I was interviewing with a CFO, I understood what they're looking for, what their pains are, because I've sat in those seats before. And it really, in my opinion, if someone asked me what my superpower is, it's being able to meet people where they are and explain really complicated things in a way they understand. And had I not had all that experience, I would not be able to do that today.
Got it. So let's shift just slightly, but tie it back into the idea of purpose. So you became a father. You learned through the birth of your daughters that both of them have cystic fibrosis, and that reshaped your priorities. So how did that change for you what security and success meant?
Yeah. Well, it started a little bit earlier than that, but it ties in. So when I was let's see, in 2014, before I had kids, before I was married, my dad was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left my job. I moved back home, and I was basically helping my dad through that. He battled for 3 years. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But during he was a big musician, and he was the musician that wasn't super talented, but loved music and really became like the inspiration for a lot of what I did in music, which I think is why ultimately they pushed me so hard to be a performer, because they were trying to vicariously live through me. But he loved the Rolling Stones, and on his funeral, he decided to play a song, which is "Time Waits for No One," which I actually have tattooed on my arm. And it started to put in perspective for me this idea of time waits for no one. It really does not. And so if you feel like you're in the wrong spot, if you feel like you're in the wrong spot of life, you want to try something different, I think it even accelerated my ability to well, you know what? I can always go back. I'm going to go take some risks, because I don't want to be, 40, 50, 60 and look back and say, well, I should have maybe taken a leap when I didn't. And so, 4 years later, when I had my first daughter, and it was in the height of COVID, and when Amelia was born, 8 days in, we got her cystic fibrosis diagnosis, and life expectancy is 45 today. They expect it to be more later, higher later, but as it exists, you have to think about taking care of my daughter like I had to take care of my dad, and that was really rough. And it just started putting in perspective, what exactly am I doing? Yeah, make more money, try to get a promotion. But once I started having those roles, I'm like, what is my purpose exactly here? And I think I got to it much earlier than a lot of people in life do. I think people have that maybe when they're 40, 50, maybe 10 to 15 years beyond where I am. So part of me is grateful that these things kind of push me to stop and think about it. And that shaped just about every decision I've made ever since. And 4 months ago, my second daughter, Lennon, was born, also has cystic fibrosis. So it gives me purpose. But it also, time is more valuable than any dollar I'm ever going to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what's crystal clear right now.
You made me think of one of my favorite songs, although I can't remember the name of the song, but it's by Bonnie Raitt, and it's about time. It's about time passing by. So yeah, those kind of songs, sometimes they hit you with important messages at the right time.
They do.
So fatherhood and having your daughters and finding out about their diagnosis, did it make you more cautious, more fearless when it came to your professional risk and building Revonics?
Yeah. Well, around the same time that I started Revonics, I was let go from another company. And my wife, we had decided we were going to stay home, and she was going to leave her job in order to watch them and give her everything that she needs. And obviously during COVID, things were unprecedented, as we like to say, during that time. So we were very nervous about putting her in school, and even doctors recommended, hey, for the first 2 years at minimum, she should really avoid illness and be, how daycares are like petri dishes. So we decided my wife was going to stay home, watch Amelia, and I was going to be kind of the breadwinner. And so when I was let go right before Christmas, almost 3-4 years ago, before I started this company, I said no more. No more allowing other people to control whether we have health insurance. No more allowing other people to dictate when I'm working, when I'm not working, what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. It didn't make sense anymore. And I realized that the same risk of going and doing it on my own is the same risk of relying on somebody else to give you that opportunity. And the more that I stayed in consulting and in SaaS and technology where turnover is high, again, it built up this callous, this idea that I could always go back to the same spot, but I'm actually likely more secure if I'm able to build a business to support my family. I'm in more control. I can pick which benefit providers, which again, for us, we hit our deductible in the first month. We're talking $40,000 in medication alone for both my kids each month. So you can imagine how if you're let go from a company, or you even have to switch a company, and all of those things, they change. Your deductibles reset every time you switch. It was incredibly costly. And that was a big reason. Obviously the time was important. I wanted to try to build my work around my life, not the other way around, which allows me to do work with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation locally, obviously watch my kids, stay home, not have to travel into an office. But it was supremely important to the decision of starting.
Okay, got it. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk just for a minute about Revonics. We've been talking about it, but we haven't really explained what it is. So what problem does Revonics solve in plain language for someone who might be hearing about it for the first time?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's really directed at growing B2B tech and SaaS companies. Those that are DIYing their own tech stack right now. We often hear, a company starts growing, a founder, a CFO, a VP of sales has to decide on a CRM. All of the individual departments start building in silos. Marketing is worried about marketing, is buying marketing tools. Sales is worrying about sales, is buying sales tools. But it does get to a point where when you try to scale, data is inconsistent, you're overspending on all of your tech stacks. There's not a single place where you can get agnostic advice and also execution of turning around this issue. And it holds people back from growing and reaching their revenue goals. So there's kind of this inflection point where businesses say, I can't do this on my own anymore, but I also can't afford a team of 10 individuals with all this knowledge full time in order to come in and fix it. So we provide that team, that outside fractional team that does all of your architecture, your process improvement, and your systems implementation across the entire go-to-market. And it's just something that, there are a lot of competitors out there, a lot of my friends that, they do a thing. And it's the easier thing to do as a company. They tell you to niche down, own your tiny space, and you become known for it. That works for them, but it does not work for our clients because they also do not want to bring in 10 different entities to try to make it work because there's no cohesion between them. And that's really resonated with our clients and our people. And it's really made a big difference.
Got it. So when you started Revonics, I'm trying to remember if you said you were working for a company when you started, but when you started it, did it shift from an interesting idea to something you felt compelled to build with no real plan B? Or was it like you got let go from that company and decided I'm going to go build this consultancy? Where did it all happen in that process? Where do you feel like it was an interesting idea and then it shifted into, I have to do this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, one of the consultancies that I worked at, within the short period of time that I worked there, it became intrinsically clear that I could do it. Because I was close enough to decision makers and executive leadership to understand what it took behind the scenes to run the business. So after only a short period of time, it was very clear, I could do this, where that was really the last thing that I had a question about is, could I own a business? Because it was the first time. I knew I could do the work. I knew I could provide a service. I knew what I just shared was possible and would be a differentiator. What I didn't quite know yet was, okay, how do I build this entity out of thin air? How do I register an LLC? How do I do taxes? What's my, like all of that. And once I realized how, I was like, if these people can do it, I can do it. Going back to like the Little Wing guitar story, right? It's like, just because you come from a family of business owners and like you had help doesn't mean that I can't do it my own way and learn. And so it was very much I could either start interviewing again, or this idea that was in the back of my mind, I can execute on it and see, knowing that I could always go back potentially to the workforce, and find another job. So it was kind of a like, look, no one's giving you an opportunity right now. Go build your own opportunity and do it yourself. And I'm very lucky that early on, a few things broke in my way. Getting my first few customers, I didn't have a network. I was not priming my professional network for a move like this. So I didn't have any previous employers that I had stayed in touch with that I could say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. Can you be my first client? I didn't have all that. So I had to basically build my network from the ground up by myself. I didn't have a
Hmm.
co-founder. I didn't have funding. I didn't have, I didn't have any of it. I had to go build it all on my own. But I'm so thankful that I did it that way. Because
Yeah.
had I had those things, I wouldn't be able to make it through things that I'm experiencing now as my team grows. Because it's easy to say, well, I've been through harder times. So because I've done that, now I can now do this. It's not going to be an issue. Keep your eye on the ball.
One of the things that I do as a mentor and a coach is I also talk to people about transformation. And just to kind of weave this into your story a little bit, one of the things that we talk about in these transformational discussions and as a part of the training is that there are moments in your life that are so memorable that you can recall them as if they happened yesterday. But then if I were to ask you what you had for lunch yesterday, you might not be able to remember.
I do not.
Uh,
Absolutely not.
so you can remember this moment in time in which you were asked to read music
Hmm.
and to play music. And what struck me in your story is that, of course, living in Austin, Texas, Stevie Ray Vaughan is the king of the live music capital of the world here in Austin, Texas. I don't know for sure, but I would guess he doesn't know how to read music. He didn't know how to read music either. That's what made him such an artistic genius, is that he was doing something so unique that you didn't have to read music. So I go back to this
Hmm.
time when you were in that class. If I were there today talking to that teacher, I would say the best music, the best things don't come from a script. They come from, uh, as you maybe the metaphor that you were saying is hearing the music, watching the
Hmm.
music being played, and then developing your own style.
Yep.
Right? That's what musicians really are.
Yeah.
They don't, some do, but the important ones don't tend to copy what other people do, but they use those influences, right? So for Stevie Ray Vaughan, for example, it was BB King and things like that, the blues.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting story that you told because not because I like it because it's about Stevie Ray Vaughan in Austin,
Of course.
Texas,
Of course.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
but also because I think there's a meaning in there for you about not just proving to people that you can do it, even though you're told you can't do it because you don't know how to read music, but also this understanding that the best possible things don't come out of being able to read the music. I would venture to say that the people who were in that class that knew how to read music, that could play that song, weren't very good at it because so many people do it that way in their personal and their professional lives. They read the sheet of music, they try to follow along. The circumstances and the situation are so unique to each individual person that it's almost impossible to ever uh, do it the same way. And so,
Hmm.
kind of tying that back into this founder discussion, which I'll get into more of this in just a minute, but
Yeah.
when I see on social media and I see people talking about like, such and such person started this business and they reached, unicorn status in a year. And, founders are like, I want to start a company because I want to do that too. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. There's not a script you can follow. If there was, we would all have done it.
Yep.
What you do is you build on these influences that all happen going all the way back to your childhood sometimes. These influences that you have, and you kind of weave them together in a tapestry, and they all become part of that purpose, and they all become the reason why you become a founder. And
Yep.
for me in particular, part of what I'm looking for is this idea of no plan B, right? There's lots of founders out there that I could interview. I want to interview those that feel like there's no plan B. There's no way to go back. I'm only going forward and I'm using the experiences and the education that I have and I'm building it. So
Yep.
it, when, not if, I was going to say if, but when Revonics succeeds in the way that you hope,
Yep.
what changes will that bring for your customers and for your family?
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with this idea of the infinite game by Simon Sinek? It's like a very popular thing that he talks about. there is really no winning in business. It's how long you can continue. It's not like you hit a certain revenue or you are the best in a certain category, which is it's so like it's perception based. Like, what is the best? The best customer service, the best revenue, the best innovation, whatever. So for me, I think what's really defining in like this whole journey is understanding, what does success look like? When can I check the box and saying that I'm being successful? And I've switched my thinking to think that it's like a certain number, or that it's a certain size, or that it's ready to be sold, or that for me, it's about generating revenue for cystic fibrosis, because honestly, my pie in the sky, and I don't know if we'll get there, but this is what drives me. My pie in the sky is that I get big enough to fund enough revenue, to fund enough research, to find a cure in my lifetime. And honestly, that's kind of an infinite game. And that's what keeps me going over and over and over again. So it's really difficult to tell you, well, what does success look like? And finite success. Like, at what point do I say, I've done what I need to do? There's really, it might be done for Revonics if I get to an acquisition, or I get to a certain size to where I'm no longer in the business anymore. But then it becomes, well, what else am I doing to reach my final goal? Is it doing another business? Is it doing advisory? Is it joining the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, like, and doing that as my job? And I have this on the side. Like, I still haven't quite figured out, like, what does success look like? However, in the short term, I have a couple different things that I think about. One is, do I have the freedom of my time? Which has been a work in progress as an early founder, as it is with most. One is, does my team enjoy the work that they are? Is it fulfilling? Do the people respect each other? Do they feel like they have a purpose beyond just doing the RevOps work, which I feel like I'm very proud of? It's probably one of the biggest things that I feel really comfortable with, is like, we've built a fantastic team of people that, I mean, people say we have good culture. You guys are going to have to take my word for it, but like, I'm very, very happy about the team and culture that I've built. And then of course, revenue, yeah, we're growing, but I don't really see that as a finite. We've gotten to 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, 50 million in ARR. I kind of see it as let's just keep going. And as long as those other things remain true, I consider that being successful.
So 2 things. One is, what questions, if any, did I not ask that we should talk about? Number 1. Number 2, is there anything you want to talk about or say about your family? You mentioned your wife and your daughters. Is there anything you want to say about that before I wrap things up with kind of a summary?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think when it comes to family, especially, I think one of the best pre-business decisions I made was choosing who my wife was going to be. And I did not choose my wife to, find a good business partner. But if Kiana was not willing to make the sacrifices that she has, I would not be where I am either. And the support of, and it's not like, listen, we have a viable business. We've been profitable from day one. Like, we're doing very, very well, right? For the slice of time that we've been doing it. But people don't see when I'm online early on building a website by myself, or doing extra research, or helping customers between 8 and 9 on a one-off basis because they had a problem. What you're not seeing is my wife handling 2 crying kids, and my wife helping me with food, because frankly, if I didn't get a text message in the middle of the day that says, hey Jeremy, it's 3:00, you haven't eaten, you need to get up off your desk and eat, I don't think people really see the behind the scenes work. And there's not a platform on LinkedIn for her to get the credit that she has. But all my people on my team, myself, our customers, I don't think that they realize how much that my family does play a part in us being able to do what we've done. And so at a minimum here, I'll say I want to thank her beyond words, honestly. And she supporting me and supporting our team indirectly will be the reason why we continue to be successful. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am at all today. So again, there's no LinkedIn place to comment or like on it, but like, I think your spouse and your significant other, your support system behind you as a founder, is so important. And if she didn't push me every day, because again, if you're a founder and you haven't sat on your desk with your head in your hands at least once or twice, like you're not really doing it right. So I want to thank her for helping me pick myself up on rough times and rough days. And I know she'll continue to do that. So.
Sounds amazing. I have a similar story. My wife had a successful professional career at Microsoft for 10 years. And I would not have been able to be as successful as I was if I didn't have the ability to have somebody, a partner that took care of the kids and the family and the house. Allowed me to focus on my career, which ultimately wasn't a personal or egotistical thing. It was really her understanding and my understanding that that was the foundation of getting us to where we wanted to get. And that was just the choice that we made at the time. Yep. Whether it was conscious or not, that's how it turned out.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
No. Everyone stop listening and enjoy the holidays.
All right. But I'm going to summarize first because yes. I really, really appreciate that you shared all that. There's an element of very personal aspect of it for you. But I felt like it was important to tie all that into your profession. So one of the things that stands out in your story is that not having a plan B wasn't about bravado. I said that in the beginning. It was about responsibility to your daughters, to your family, and the responsibility of how you choose to spend your time and your energy. So your path from Western Massachusetts through a nonlinear career into building Revonics wasn't about chasing certainty. It was about earning clarity, in my opinion. You didn't become fearless because risk disappeared. You became fearless because a purpose made that risk worth taking. And so to me, based on what you described, and it feels that this is what you were trying to say, is that Revonics isn't just a company. It's a reflection as well of a belief that systems should work together, that growth shouldn't come at a cost of sanity, and that the way that we work should support the life that we're trying to build, not compete with it. And that's what Plan B really means. Not that failure isn't possible, but that walking away from what matters most isn't. So thank you very much for sharing your story. I think it's one that founders should hear. People who have a desire or in the middle of or in the beginning of founding a business that may not be grounded in the purpose for why they're doing it other than money. We hear those stories so many times, like, I'm going to go start a company and I'm going to become rich. And then I'll become part of the FIRE community and I'll retire early. Yep. That's not a purpose. That's just something that you read about that you want to do. So I like to share these stories because while your story is unique and it is not like anybody else's, that's the point, is that people should reflect upon what happened in their life that got them to this point of deciding that they wanted to found a company. And is that enough? Is that enough to create this plan B for themselves where this has to work? So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And happy holidays to you and your family, and the best of luck in the new year.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to be here.